This is Optimal Living Daily, episode 1974, Question Everything by Shira Gura of shiragura.com. And I'm Justin Malik, reading to you every single day of the year. If you find value in it, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could share it with friends, family, coworkers, anyone really. But I'll keep this intro nice and short, so let's get right to it and start optimizing your life. Question Everything by Shira Gura of shiragura.com. I happen to be a traditionalist in many ways. I love tradition and see the role it plays in my personal life and in the life of my family and in my community. But what I also believe is just as important is questioning tradition. Does the tradition work for you? Is it still meaningful for you? Is it valuable for you? Great, terrific, keep it. If it doesn't, I was and still am encouraging you to consider why you are holding on to it. We recently changed the tradition of having a big festive meal at the Passover Seder, and it was actually incredibly well received. Even my 16-year-old, who was not happy about this decision, when I got him clear a few days before the event, was actually relieved because he was satisfied from the first course we had during the Seder. He said it was a great decision that we made and that we should do this from now on, year to year. Had I been stuck on believing we had to keep the tradition for tradition's sake, we would have been sitting around a big table with tons of food that would have taken hours and hours of preparation. And for what? Do you know how easy my preparations were this year? I hardly worked in the kitchen this year besides making the soup, which is a cinch. I sliced vegetables, which was simple, bought special potato chips, and had pre-made French fries ready to be warmed up. It was so easy and so relaxing. And this is my point, that we should get into the habit of questioning everything. We have something like 60 to 70,000 thoughts that arise in our minds every day. Most of them we're not aware of, and many of them are recycled thoughts we've thought in the past. Take, for example, this festive meal. I bet my bottom dollar that there were many people thinking how hard they had to work the days leading up to this festive meal. They believed that thought. Why? Well, maybe because they witnessed that from the adults in their house growing up, or maybe it's because they've experienced that themselves, so they believe it has to be that way. But why? Why do we need to get into a habit of being ourselves? When I talk about questioning everything, I don't just mean questioning traditions, I mean questioning the habit of being you. What time do you wake up in the morning? Do you ever question why? Why don't you wake up earlier? What time do you eat breakfast? Have you ever thought about why? Why don't you eat later or earlier? How often do you exercise? What kind of exercise do you do? Ever question that? How do you show up at work? With what kind of attitude? Why? What time do you go to bed? Why? What do you usually eat for dinner? Why? What do you do with your free time? Have you ever thought about doing something else? What do you do when you're feeling stressed? Have you ever thought about doing something else for your emotional health and well-being? If you're starting your own business, what's your strategy? Why? I happen to love asking myself why I'm eating when I'm eating. I think that happens to be such a fantastic question. I think so much of our lives is run on autopilot. We don't question things. We just do things as we've done things in the past because they are familiar to us, which makes it feel like it's a safer way to live because it's more familiar. But just because something is familiar to us doesn't make it the best choice for us in all times and in all areas of our lives. When you live by autopilot, you don't live deliberately. You don't live from a place of, I'm doing this on purpose because I'm not stuck on something and because I've gotten clear ahead of time. But rather you live from a place of, I've done this in the past. This is how it's done. Don't question why, just do it. And while breaking traditions or questioning everything can be scary, I truly see it as a way to feel the most alive and feel like I'm living my life on purpose with every decision I make. So I'm not eating breakfast at 8 a.m. because that's what I've done my whole life, but rather I'm eating when I'm hungry, for example. Or I'm not celebrating my son's bar mitzvah on Shabbat morning with the entire community because that's the expectation, but rather we're going to have a service in our home for a small group of family and friends on Shabbat evening because that's what works best for my son, which by the way is happening in 2 weeks. Or I'm not planning a festive meal at 10 p.m. just because someone told me that's what I'm supposed to do, but rather I'll create an evening that makes the most sense for my family and guests. This is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about waking up. I'm talking about questioning not only the things you do, but even the thoughts you think. You think this person should be acting differently? Question that. You think no one cares about you? Question that. You think showing up in the world the way you are is going to get you somewhere? Question that. Question everything. Question your thoughts. Question your actions. Question who you are being. And from that place, start living deliberately. Choosing in advance who you want to be, what you want to think, and the actions you want to take. And do so from a place of joy, not from a place of resentment. Be the person you want to see in your life. And keep showing up that way. Because you've questioned it, and because you're clear that this is who you want to be. And that's the only thing you are truly responsible for anyway. You just listened to the post titled, Question Everything by Shira Gura of shiragura.com. Now, thank you for being here and listening every day, including weekends and holidays, and I'll see you tomorrow over the weekend where your optimal life awaits.